Welcome to today's Crosspoint Devotion. Today is going to be the beginning of a four-part series that I would like to use to talk a little bit about discipleship. I read an article recently by a Hebrew scholar as he was describing the process of discipleship in the first century, and the four things that he identified that disciples in the first century would do with a rabbi really struck a chord with me, and so I thought I would share those with you, because if you're a follower of Jesus, then we want to take some of those concepts that they incorporated in the first century and apply those to our walk with Jesus today. So the passage that I want to share today will introduce the first of the four concepts of discipleship from the first century. And so that concept is living with your rabbi. Now keep in mind that in the first century, each disciple would have a rabbi. And we find that in John chapter 1, John the Baptist had some disciples who were following him. And they were looking at John the Baptist as their rabbi. John realized that he was not the Messiah, but he was the one who was going to introduce the Messiah to the world. So he began to prepare his disciples for the day when they would move their allegiance from John over to Jesus. And he's done that in chapter 1, and he's prepped them to get them ready for this moment. And then we begin to read in John chapter 1, verse 35, "The next day, John was standing with two of his disciples. When he saw Jesus passing by, he said, 'Look, the Lamb of God.' The two disciples heard him say this and followed Jesus. When Jesus turned and noticed them following him, he asked them, 'What are you looking for?' They said to him, 'Rabbi,' which means teacher, 'where are you staying?' 'Come and you'll see,' he replied. So they went and saw where he was staying, and they stayed with him that day. It was about 4 p.m. This passage begins to introduce us to that first concept of discipleship, and that is that you would live with your rabbi. Now, I want us to be real honest in saying that in 2024, it would be very difficult for us to live with someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, like they did in the first century. My guess is that for the most part, once these disciples began to follow Jesus, they stayed with him pretty much all the time. And that would be impossible in our day. But what does this concept do for us as we think about discipleship in the current year in which we live? I think it reminds us that in our discipleship process, we need to have a spiritual mentor that we can go to and spend time with and live with, if you will, so that we can grow in our faith in Jesus. There's always someone in front of us who's a little ahead of us in the game of walking with Jesus. And the more time we can spend with those people, those spiritual mentors, the better off we're going to be. Because it's sometimes as we're riding to a hospital to make a visit with somebody from our church who's sick, or when we sit down and enjoy a meal with them, or we just hang out with them one afternoon and play some games. It's in those moments sometimes that we get into some very serious, deep discussions about our faith and what it looks like to follow Jesus. So I want to encourage you, if you're a follower of Jesus, and especially if you're new to the faith, look around. Find somebody who's ahead of you in the game and begin to live some life with them so that they can help you grow in your discipleship. Well, I hope that'll be the first of the 4 steps that we're going to look at, and that you can begin to work on incorporating that so that you can become a deeper and more intimate follower of Jesus Christ. Hope that'll encourage you, and we hope you'll come back and join us for the next Crosspoint Devotion.